Welcome to NovoEdTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEdTalks podcast, a podcast for training trailblazers to get real. I'm your host, Melissa Fisk. I'm the producer of the NovoEdTalks podcast, and today I am joined by Dave Kerschbaum, who is a director of learning strategy at SAP Concur. Dave has been designing learning solutions and strategies for a variety of audiences for the past 15 years and has presented at several local events and national conferences. Outside of work, Dave is an improviser, songwriter, aura chaser, and lightning bug watcher. Dave, that is the best introduction I think I've given on this podcast thus far. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you. It's actually Aurora Chaser. I'm not sure what an aura chaser is, but I think maybe, that would be even more interesting than Aurora chasing.
But both very, very, very interesting. but yours makes a lot more sense, I think.
I don't know. I might be missing out on something. Thank you for that inspiration.
Well, welcome, Dave. Why don't you start by introducing yourself a little bit further, talking about your role and your company?
Sure. So I am a director of learning strategy with SAP Concur on the LX team. You may know Concur as the travel expense software company, and yeah, that's what we do. We help to automate travel expense and APs processes. So that's the solution that Concur provides. And as a director of learning strategy, I help to ensure that both the projects that our team is involved with and our internal team strategy align with the greater organizational strategy.
Awesome. And who are some of your learners and what are some of their biggest challenges?
So they are, for the most part, sales and sales adjacent team members. And so, yeah, we help them optimize what they do. If you'd ask them about one of their biggest challenges, I'd guess that they'd say, everything changes at a fast rate, not just for them, but for their customers as well. So keeping on top of all that they need to be on top of, it involves a variety of facets. Knowing how our technology is evolving, sure. Also knowing how their customers' needs, challenges, etc., are evolving, and knowing, trying to stay on top of that, and even look at the future and figure out, well, how can our solution best meet their needs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of tech to stay abreast.
Yeah,
while
for
trying
sure.
to do your job. What are some of your biggest L&D challenges with reaching these folks, and how are you approaching them?
So I'm always interested, and always have been interested in getting as close as I can to the learner's actual experience as possible. So I want to be able to truly empathize with their day-to-day, what they do, so that I can design those solutions that really meet them where they are, closely fit their needs, and then at the same time, of course, meet the needs of the organization. But access to the learner isn't always real easy because they're busy. They're on calls all day long. And so I want to make sure, we want to make sure that we're spending their time in a way that's valuable to them. That's one of the big needs, or one of the big challenges, I'd say. I'd say accessing and parsing out data is always something I'm interested in getting better at. Also, being able to pick apart the data. So to know, okay, if we see a movement in the right direction towards KPIs, sales or whatever it is, how much of that is due to how we are helping them with our solutions? How much is due just to other variables, to things going on with their customers, to the where we are in the quarter, all of that. There's a lot that goes into being able to really understand what the data mean and what data are important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a struggle, especially in a sales environment too, because there's so many factors in there, and you can't say it's all one or the other.
For sure. It's an interesting challenge. It can be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. With the rise of remote work and virtual collaboration, how has your approach to learning and development adapted to ensure that employees are equipped with the necessary skills?
So our workforce, or excuse me, our learners, the sales team, they're dispersed in all across the world. So it's not like they're all in one office and we just come in and do an in-person learning. So I think we've always been in that situation where we're thinking about remote work, whether remote means working at home or just remotely from office to office. And then, our team is on the road a lot. So, what's vital is being able to understand how our learners need to access their materials, how they want to learn in the flow of their work, what that flow of the work is. And that may not even be all that different from if they were all in one place, right? So, I mean, we all know and love to cite the 70-20-10 rule. And, I'm sure that varies from industry to industry, from office to office, worker to work, or whatever. But I think that holds true in our case, that, and what that means, a couple things. One, that learning doesn't need to rely on that in-person delivery, first of all. But second of all, it's all of our responsibilities as learning experience designers to really get to know the learner, to understand what their learning preferences are, their habits, and to build what works for them, to offer them. So it's not even always building, but to offer them learning solutions that works for them, and not just asking them to bend their learning habits to be more convenient for us, the designers and the deliverers of said solutions. Does that get close to answering your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's funny because I think that's something that, we've done and you've seen in software development and websites and mobile apps and things like that for years. And now this, kind of keeping the learner at the center, the quote unquote, end user, if you were to use the software analogy. And now that's becoming much more commonplace because it's not just in these standard situations that we're used to. It's very, very different for learner to learner. And so that's something that's really cool that I think we've seen. But how does your team kind of identify and address skills gaps within the sales team? Is there a way that you guys kind of look at how they're performing that you can analyze?
Yeah. So for this, we lean on tools that others have invented or perfected. We are big fans of Kathy Moore's action mapping. And lately, several of us on the team have gone through ATD's Master Performance Consulting certification program. And we love it. And that's been really huge. So they use a methodology called performance DNA, I believe is what it's called. That's really helped us to get the heart of like where gaps are and what influences affect any kind of gaps, because it's not all just learning. And then what would be feasible to implement as solutions that are the most impactful. So we are finding that has been a really useful tool for us, and we're excited about how others in the organization are excited about what we are able to come up with. So yeah, just started really that within the past 6 months or so. So yeah, ask me how that's going in a year.
All right. I'll get back to you on that.
Awesome.
Speaking of how things are going, can you share a successful case study or example of an L&D initiative that has significantly impacted employee performance? And this can be high level, super detailed, however you want to answer this.
Cool. I can't go into too many details, but I can tell you that using that performance consulting methodology, we were able recently to, there was an initiative. We wanted to take a look at a particular product that we offer, where we saw, hey, there's an opportunity to really increase some sales here. And so I dove into using that performance consulting methodology to find those gaps, to talk to people on the ground, learn where their barriers were in, maybe selling that particular product, learn what made things easier. So I was able then to kind of take a look at the, again, like we talked about, those easy wins, the feasibility versus impact. We came up with a solution that did not involve training, but the solution we came up with, our learners love it. And we've heard a lot of great anecdotal evidence about its usefulness. And we've also just seen that, some evidence of that in the field. So we're thrilled about that. Is something that we're going to keep tracking and keep expanding now, because it's been very useful, very helpful.
That's awesome. I love that. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes as like teachers or whatever, it's like, how can we, teach in a way that's not teaching, but we don't really ever. So that's really
Yeah,
great.
well, and it also gets to, learning what is it that they need. Well, they don't always need a 3-part e-learning or whatever. They even though we've got great software that we could build that really well in, we've got tools that we love. And when that solution is called for, you bet we turn to it, right? But in this case, maybe it's more, look, there's so much information about this really great product, and I just need to know what is relevant when, and that sort of a thing. So, help me to sift through to what I need right now.
Yeah.
So the more that we can, getting back to that learning in the flow of work, right? The more that you can get to helping your learner, because your learner doesn't think of themselves as a learner, they think of themselves as whatever it is that they're doing in the moment.
Sure.
So if you're able to help them learn while really doing that thing, that's much better than taking them out of their flow, the flow of their work, and taking a half-hour training or whatever it is.
Sure, that makes such sense. You mentioned that you do have some tools and software that you love. What kind of role does technology play in your programs? And do you want to speak to any of those tools or platforms and how you're using them?
Yeah, so we've used for e-learning, we've used Articulate Suite for forever. We love Beyond as a tool for building animations. They've got some great new features coming. I mean, that's the other thing. We like tools that aren't just content to deliver something great and then sit, because they are also looking at the changing needs, the changing landscape, that sort of thing. There's some video editing tools that we love as well. Camtasia, for example. But there are a lot of tools out there, and there's a lot of new tools out there, and they are great for what they do. But it's very tempting to either go with the really shiny tool, or to go with your old standby, because it's super well, right? But I think it's so important to to do the work ahead of time, and to make sure that the solution that you are building is really the thing that's going to meet your learner's need and the needs of the organization as well. So there's a lot of there's just a ton of exciting tools out there. The trick is leading with the need, and not with the solution.
Absolutely. You see that a lot. Like there's software for everything now. So it's like, but is it going to actually accomplish like what you need and what your learners need? So super important. Thinking about the industry in general, if you look back over the past 5 years, what do you think some of the key takeaways are from how L&D programs have evolved?
Well, it's interesting, because I feel like a lot of the case studies that you see that are, presented in different, whether in demos or award ceremonies, whatever, or are highlighted. It's not always like the innovative tool, but often the innovative way of thinking about a unique need that somebody's learners has. And going back to the basics. I mean, I know it may be a little bit of a boring answer, but what has not changed is how people learn. What has changed is the environment in which they learn. What has changed is their performance needs. Okay. But brain science hasn't changed. And so it doesn't mean we don't adapt, doesn't mean that we don't continue to keep abreast of the tools that are useful and that are new. But I think it just going back to the fundamentals and meeting your learners where they are in the flow of work, getting to know what their need is. Don't assume anything about your learner. Ask. Use your empathy maps, whatever, all of your design thinking. Like these are great tools to really get at what it is to really design a solution, which may or may not mean building something that is going to be useful for both the organization and your learner. I think another thing that has always been important, but is going to continue to be ever more important, along with the rise of just the evolution, I guess, of technology. This is not even just within the learning space, but trust is going to be very, very important. A lot of emerging technologies are bringing a lot of questions, a lot of skepticism, a lot of a fair bit of suspicion, not always unmerited. So honestly, with the zeitgeist right now being one that's sort of nervous excitement, but a lot of anxiety, I think being transparent with what we're doing, with why we do it, with the data that we are asking for, with what we are doing with the data we are asking for, that I think is going to be super important going forward, just to really establish ourselves in L&D as, that entity of trust.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think those are, simple concepts like you mentioned, but I think they're so important still, like simple concepts, but like with everything we've seen in the past like 5 years and changing and what we're seeing on the horizon, that those simple concepts need like almost so desperately to be at the center of everything because it's
Yeah.
so easy to get so distracted with everything else and like caught up in everything that has changed and evolved. You kind of talked obviously about the importance of, trust and relying on that and asking the important questions with like, what are we doing with data? But as the workplace continues to evolve, even, how do you see the future of L&D changing just even more with new technologies and trends and things like that?
I hope this is this answers the question. But my main hope is that organizations do continue to invest in employees' growth, that they do lean on their L&D functions, and realize that that's going to be really the key thing is in developing your employees to be able to achieve those goals that you've gotten as an organization, and to lean on L&D to help align what your workers are able to do with what the organization wants to do, to have that path, to move forward. If I'm somebody who wants to move forward in my career, maybe stay with the company, but change what what my position is or what I'm working on, just to have that path that I know I can do so and align with what is important to my company. I think L&E just has a real good chance to be that guide right now through, a lot of the tumult and the change, some of the angst that's happening right now in a lot of the industries. That's kind of where I see L&D being, not only trustworthy, as I mentioned in the answer to your previous question, but leaned on and trusted by the organizations that they sit in.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That actually hasn't come up before, but I think that's a much more like, emotionally intelligent kind of response to that question. So thank you so much for sharing that. I love that.
Of course, yeah.
As a fun send off, what advice would you give to those just stepping into kind of any L&D role?
Get a coach or a mentor. It's really amazing. I think like what a coach can do, what a coach has done for me is just kind of reveal or almost like organize what you already know about yourself.
Yeah.
Organize,
So
your
true.
thoughts in terms of your hopes for what you want to do next. It's amazing how that can seem impossible to untangle until somebody asks you the right questions. I'm a big fan of questions. That might be what led me to this career.
Yeah.
I love asking a good question. I love being asked a good question, especially if it's, excuse me, one where I don't know the answer to right away. So get a coach who can ask good questions.
I love both of those. Those are great. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure having you on NovoEdTalks.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. It was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it.
Awesome. And thank you to our listeners for once again tuning into the NovoEdTalks podcast.